Hey there, I'm Colleen Taylor, backstage at TechCrunch Disrupt, New York City 2013, and sitting with me is Everlane CEO and founder Michael Preysman, who just came off stage on a panel called Software is Eating the Mall. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And so Everlane, of course, is an apparel company that's bringing things that have been offline to online.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you wearing that's Everlane?
I am wearing, let's see here, cashmere cardigan, our Oxford, and a belt that's coming out in September. So everything from the top up, I wear Everlane all the time now. And we have yet to do pants and shoes, although we're doing a women's sandal in June.
Ooh, I will look forward to that because I'm a fan of Everlane. I'm wearing an Everlane t-shirt, which I wasn't even planning to do because you were here. I just love it.
It's an old color that we had, so you've got like a vintage collection here.
I know. You should bring it back now that I have you here.
No, we shouldn't bring it back, and that way you keep it vintage, and maybe you can resell it for a higher value.
Oh, I like the way. This is why he's a businessman.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about this transparency thing that Everlane is really sort of building its brand on. I know just this week you came out with a big thing on your website and a video about how exactly your shirts are made. Why is that so important to you?
I think when we started Everlane, the big thing that we came out with was we said, hey, the fashion industry is this sort of totally misunderstood. Nobody knows where their products come from, what they cost to make, and it's unlike any other industry in that way where you just really have no understanding of whether this product is actually a higher quality than that product. And so we came out and we said, hey, we're going to tell people everything. We're going to tell them what it costs to make. We're going to tell them where it's made. We're even going to give them the detail of why it costs that much to make. And so that's been really the foundation of what we started with. And I guess the way we think about it is we say, hey, the industry has really got this major problem with it. And that's like, we always think, why is that the case? And how do we make it better? And transparency has been that big push, and so we're now starting to give people an inside look into our factories that we use. So just this past Monday, we released this photo essay showing our LA t-shirt factory where it all started, giving the detail and the history behind how we started with the t-shirt and then what goes into actually making, the 15,000 t-shirts we make every month.
Right, and it's an interesting timing too because there's been this huge tragedy in Bangladesh where a factory that makes a lot of labels that people see everywhere at Walmart and things like this, hundreds of people were killed. It was terrible working conditions.
Totally, and those things, our thoughts go out to those people, and I think we try to visit all of the factories, and I think the problem with that is what happens in the fashion industry is people try to push costs down as much as possible, and when you do that, you put pressure on your suppliers, and then they go out and try to source different places, and you can't really, you're all the way out here, and you can't see what's going out over there. And so people have no insight into whether it's being outsourced or whether the factory conditions are that great. And so, in that way, us telling people what it is and what factories we use and trying to find the right partners puts the pressure on us from our customer to make sure that we're always using the best conditions.
And so it sounds like you can afford to do, the higher quality thing and still sell it for less because there are a couple things, and you guys talked about this a lot on stage, that you don't spend money on. You don't spend any money really on advertising or on brick and mortar stores.
Yeah. The biggest one is we don't sell through other retailers. So I think traditionally when you were a brand and you launched for the first time, you said, hey, how do I get an audience? And so what you had to do is you had to go to a Barney's and you had to retail through Barney's, and Barney's marks up at a minimum 2.5x. Right. And then of course you were responsible for all the marketing of your own product. You were responsible for even building some of your own brick and mortar locations because if you're a James Purse, you still have physical locations. And then there's all the creative, and there's just so much that you have to do to maintain all of it. And by being online, it's a much tighter sort of supply chain on the back end. And we don't spend money on marketing. We sort of rely on or advertising, we rely on our customers really to tell that story for us. And we've invested a lot into telling that story.
And you have done so well, and it's such a unique idea when you talk about it and when people see it that now I feel like we're starting to see some copycats. I was just talking the other day to a few really smart, bright guys from Brazil who are building a startup, and they told me it was going to be the Everlane of Brazil. How
Wonderful.
do you...
Until Everlane enters Brazil, then we will be the Everlane of Brazil.
And then when will that happen? How much pressure is it for you to kind of expand as quickly as you can because people are building these copycats in other countries? And then how do you guys keep an edge when other businesses are starting?
So I think the problem with copycats is honestly they have no soul. and it sounds silly to say that, but when you don't have soul and you don't have a reason for why you're doing the things you're doing, you're always one step behind, and you never really connect with the consumer. And I think, one thing we talked about at the panel is people are looking for a connection with the brand, and they're looking for trust. And so, there's a brand out there in Turkey that launched called Everlane, which is actually, I think Mave must mean ever in Turkish, and it's literally a complete replica of our site.
Wow.
Everything, code, they stripped all the front end code, everything. But the problem is they're always going to be a step behind, and they don't actually have the reason for being that we have. And so I don't know that we worry so much about competitors, because at the end of the day, I think our biggest competitor is ourselves, like us executing on what we're doing and continuing to push ourselves to tell a better story and create a better product. So they're just always going to be steps behind, and they're never going to feel authentic with the consumer.
Okay, and can you tell me what's next for Everlane? What is completely taking up your days and nights right now that we're going to see? Is it that sandal that's coming out in the summer?
So there's a bunch of new product launching over the next 2-3 months, and then we're now trying to plan, by June we'll have the rest of the year planned, and so the goal is to expand into a couple new categories, a lot of stuff into leather. We found some great places in Italy and Spain to make the products. And then the other big thing is just continuing to push this transparency story, and I think you'll see some stuff from us in June that will sort of push, hopefully, the industry forward in the way that no one has around a lot of this transparency that we want to do.
Great, good stuff. And then, of course, you're going to acquire Warby Parker, as Alexia talked about on stage.
Sure, or we'll just merge and have lots of fun and do something together. But
and take over the world.
Yes, one day.
Okay.
Indeed.
Well, Michael Preysman, thank you so much for coming backstage.
All right, thank you very much.